Hello, and thank you all for joining us today. I think everyone has been admitted now, and I see they're connecting on the audio. Um, so, for those of you that don't know, I'm Belinda Breidenbach. I am the Idaho SBEEP, and I am also the chair of the education subcommittee. And one of the topics that has been coming up lately that we decided we definitely needed to get some information out there on is grant writing. And we were thinking of both the fact that our website grant for the National SBEEP is going to be coming up next year for proposals, but also there are a lot of different grant opportunities out there, and some of us may be a little hesitant, but get our get the idea of what it would be like as we go into grant writing. And we have two speakers today who are extremely knowledgeable. Nancy Larson is the director of the Pollution Prevention Institute at Kansas State, and she has applied for and won multiple grants. And then our other speaker is Paula Hoag, who is the Asbestos and Small Business Ombudsman for EPA, and she has a lot of grant experience as well, and actually manages our national SBEEP grant, and as well as asbestos grants. And they are both going to share their grant writing wisdom. And I think we're going to actually start off with a poll. And our format will be, we'll have this poll, we're going to have each of our speakers, and then we'll have time for Q&A. And if you want to type any questions into the chat as you're going, because you're not sure if you're going to remember them, that's fine. I will read the questions out of the chat. So our poll is up. And you also, on that fourth question, realize that you can kind of scroll down to see all of the answers. Have we got a good participation on that poll yet?
Yes, we're about 86%.
Okay. Get your answer in if you're one of the few that has not. Okay, Mary, would you like to share that with us? The results?
Are you able to see those now?
Okay, so everybody has thought about it. And wow, 2/3 have been part of a grant application. And 84% have been awarded a grant. And 37% have considered applying for the National SBEEP website grant. Oh, that's great information. All right, thank you. Well, let's go ahead and start with our speakers. I was having a little trouble pulling up my agenda. Nancy, are you our first one up on our new order?
Yes, ma'am. I
All
sure
right.
am.
Take it away.
All right. Thanks, everyone. And I appreciate being able to share this information. I am definitely willing to work with people on being a mentor for grant applications if I'm not applying for it, if we aren't applying. And I do want to make sure I say that we have applied, because Belinda said I have applied for many and been successful, but it is definitely a team effort. And today's webinar and any of the trainings that we host is a team effort, because behind the scenes are usually at least 2 other PPI team members. And today, Abby is helping us out. She's recording, she's letting people in, taking attendance. Mary has prepared all the polls. And in the past, many of you know that Larson has worked really closely with this group too. So this is definitely a team effort. That's why I say we're presenting this as a team today. All right, and just a word about our team, because I have to promote ourselves. We are 100% grant funded. So a lot of you might get funding from your state agency to run your program. We actually negotiate with our state agency to run our SBEEP, and then we apply for other grants that complement. So our main mission is to assist industry with environmental, technical, regulatory, and pollution prevention assistance. We have been around more than 30 years thanks to the pollution prevention legislation, and we, as well as the 507 legislation under the Clean Air Act amendments. And so we have about 30 years of experience writing for competitive grants. Since about 2004, that's when I started and became the director at Pollution Prevention Institute. We have grown through grants. We have grown from a staff of about 3 to 10. Most of our applications are actually to Region 7. We do a lot of work with our EPA region. Obviously, we've got this grant. The website grant is through headquarters. But we've also worked with USDA when it was appropriate and it fit our mission. And then certainly with our state regulatory agency to run our SB program. Our success rate is about 90 to 95%. So we have really gotten a formula down for writing grants and trying to include all of our team members so we have good experience. So this is just the basics of applying for a grant, an outline that was put together by Belinda, and Paula edited it. So I really appreciate them putting this together. I was happy to speak to it. So I would say this first critical step is very, very important, because if you don't carefully read your RFA, your RFP, or whatever the new terminology may be out there that they're calling these requests for proposals or requests for applications, if you don't critically read them over and over again, mark them up, highlight them, then you really aren't sure what you're getting into, and you may not hit all the priorities. You may think you've got a great idea, but if you're not hitting the grant priorities and meeting the strategic goals of the funding agency, you are not likely going to be as competitive as you could be. And so this is obviously some photographs of some older RFAs that we worked on, but you can see all the notes I have there. These happen to be my copies. And you can see how I've indexed them. I put notes, I highlighted them. For me, this is a critical first step. I do love working with a hard copy of a full RFA, but in recent years, we've moved electronic. And now, of course, like you, we use Teams. And we go in and we highlight those documents. We flag them for certain areas where we know one person may have an expertise or an idea of something that we should include in that portion of our grant. So one of the things we do after we read that RFA is we ask ourselves, is this grant a good fit for our organization? Do the RFA goals and priorities fit the agency's mission? So I just told you what our mission was. We provide technical, environmental compliance, and pollution prevention assistance, mainly to industries, but we have done some work with communities, and we have done some work with institutions. So for example, if a RFA is wanting community gardens and planting trees and things like that, that is not necessarily, that's not going to be a fit for our agency. It isn't the audience we typically work with, but if we read it, we think it's a great opportunity. We might know of the extension service or another community group that's a good fit for. We want to make sure it's in line with our mission because we cannot be all things to all people. And you want to ask yourself, will funding be sufficient for the work that is needed so we can make sure the project is meaningful and has an impact, right? So a lot of times there's small amounts of funding, 25,000, 50,000, and is that going to be enough to make a difference at your agency and allow you to do the work you want to do? If the answer is no, you might want to reconsider applying for that. If it requires a match, how much is that match? Can you secure it? How are you going to get it? I would tell you that you can almost always secure match. If you ever have a question about how are we going to get this match, I'd be happy to consult with you. I've got a fair amount of experience under pollution prevention, getting dollar for dollar matches and working with EPA on what's eligible for match, what isn't. And so I'd be happy to consult on that. Who will work on a proposal and do they have the time? This is the biggie. Normally, we're going to get proposals that come out with about 60, maybe 90 days if we're lucky. A period of time where we're notified about the proposal versus when it is due. And so you want to figure out most of these proposals are going to take about 40 to 60 hours of prep by the main writer. So if I'm the main writer, or maybe I've got two main writers, we need to be realistic about the amount of time it's going to take to put a good proposal together. Is there admin support for review and submittal? In our case, we are fortunate enough, but we have to plan for having an AP editor review our document. We also have our graphic artist, Abby, go through it and make sure we've got all the font right and the alignment right, help it look better, make it look good, do some coloring for it. And then you want to make sure that at your agency, you have someone who knows whether you have a registered SAMS number or you've registered for one. Is it current? And then have you registered for grants.gov? Some of these types of things can be done by your admin people out of either your state office is what I would suggest. Unless you work for a university, then you probably got a pre-awards team like we do at K-State. Those are really critical first steps to ask, because if there's a big gap anywhere in there, especially that first one, with regard to your agency's mission, then you want to think hard about applying. Okay, so let's say it's a go. Yesterday, we had a team meeting in Manhattan, and we made a decision, is this a go or no go and on the climate and pollution reduction grant? And so we said, this is a go. So some of our next step then is to line out a milestone and meeting notes document. So I just grabbed an example from something we were working on last year, and I thought it was a good example. We literally, in this case, we had three main writers on the grant. We typically will have two, but on this one, we had three main writers, and then we had some people assisting. And so we just, basic tasks, like we want to make sure everybody is accountable for reading the RFA. You can't just glance at it. You've got to read it if you're going to be involved in writing. Watching the webinars. EPA now in the last year, especially with the BIL money, is providing a lot of great support tools, and the webinars are very good. They're almost always recorded and posted in a very timely manner, as well as FAQ documents. We like to do an outline of the proposal. We draft our goals and objectives. Everybody has to review and agree on them. And then we divide up the work. Who's going to do what? When is it due? And we line it out because we know that at K-State, we have to have about 95% of our proposal done 2 weeks in advance of the due date. And that's so it can go through our pre-awards process. They go through our budget with a fine-tooth comb, come back to us with, possible problems or nomenclature issues. So we have to be ready for that and make sure that we are on time. Those are things that make for some strong proposals. So how about what are the next preparation steps? Is, like I said, take advantage of these EPA provided resources. I think about a year ago, like I said, with a BIL money, they even provided a template. They provided a template for your proposal, and they aligned it with the evaluation criteria. All you had to do was grab that template and use it if you wanted to. And by the way, I recommend that you do use it. If they're offering an example for a budget table or a timetable or even for the whole proposal, I recommend that you use their example. You want to be really careful that when they have specifications, believe it or not, for the cover page, that you are following exactly what they are wanting on that cover page. Don't vary from it. You want to cover it exactly. Know what the font style, they may indicate we only accept Times New Roman or Arial 12, the size, what the margins, all of that. And then there are these things called threshold criteria. If you can't meet these threshold criteria, and usually they have to do with eligibility, if you can't meet the threshold criteria, they will not even evaluate your proposal. I often, if I have space in the page limit, I will list out their threshold criteria and put a sentence by why we meet that. And I just make it super easy for the evaluator. Next, you want to write to the evaluation criteria. It has assigned points, and it is typically in a table format. And that's how I set up, or we set up, our grant applications, our full application package. We do a cover page. Sometimes we have room for a short introduction about who we are, but that's not required. If we don't have room for it, it goes. And sometimes we have room for threshold, and then we go into, we will literally name it what is required, what it is named in the grant. We will say criteria 1 overall. We will literally use all these words, including putting the points by that particular criteria. And the reason that we do that is because the easier you make it for an evaluator, the people who are evaluating these grant proposals, they are people who don't necessarily know your program. They know the nomenclature of the program that they're evaluating for. So pollution prevention or national SB, they know that nomenclature, but they do not know, you cannot assume that they know who you are, what you do. And so you want to be careful to really explain who you are, why you're qualified, what your experience is, and then you want to write to that evaluation criteria and make it easy for them to score you appropriately. If they have to hunt for that information, they're going to likely that may take points away from your application. You may have a great application, but if it's not organized and if the reviewer can't easily find the information, you may not get all the points that you think you deserve. So final tips from the team here at K-State Pollution Prevention Institute is spend most of your time where those points are. So just a minute ago, I showed you this overall summary, and you can see this is, the approach, the summary and the approach is 45 points, but the impact of greenhouse gas reductions is 60 points. So that helps us dictate where we're going to spend time. We don't want to spend a lot of time on something that's only worth 5 or 10 points if we don't have the time to do that. I always keep a cheat sheet. because there's always things as I'm writing that I think about that I want to incorporate in, or, oh gosh, I should go back to this section and tie these things together. One of the things that the Pollution Prevention Institute really tries to do is we try to make sure that we are referencing scientific data. If we're applying for greenhouse gas reduction, we will go in and we will get quotes from EPA about climate reduction needs. So we can set up the need and we can show that we've done the homework, and we're going to try to address this need that is quoted from EPA themselves. If space allows, use some formatting to emphasize or highlight points you want the reviewer to remember. You can use little shadow boxes. You can use quotes. Review and then review and review again. So in our case, where we had 3 people kind of contributing it, we all had certain sections we had to review, and then we had one person who took responsibility for reviewing the whole thing. By that time, your eyes are kind of rolling back in your head, so you may not be the best reviewer. I must say, I'm not always the best reviewer, but sometimes things will stand out as being kind of disjointed or needing some transition. And then, letters of support are important. Work on those early, because you may give your contact a week to get your letter of support in, but they may need to be reminded a few times, as we all know we have to do in our programming. And then when you do that letter of support, provide a template so that they have an idea of the kind of information you're looking for. And you want to make sure it's addressed appropriately. So if it's supposed to go to Paula Hoag at EPA, then you want to make sure you set up that header accordingly. And then this is just an example of a quote that we used in a food waste project that we did. Reducing food waste is according to Project Drawdown. And we gave some scientific information, not all of this, but we gave this scientific information as a quote within our grant proposal. So with that, Belinda, I can stop sharing or take questions later.
And I think we're going to hold all of the questions until the end.
That sounds great.
And so at this time, Paula, would you like to share the information that you have about EPA grants and the things that you hope people will know?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Belinda. Nice job, Nancy. She's definitely an expert, especially on applying for the OSDBU grants that we're currently in our second 5-year cycle. So we had our first grant starting in 2015, and that went for the max amount of 5 years. And then we have the new current grant we're in. It's another 5-year grant cycle that started in 2025. Started in 2020, and it will expire in 2025. So already it's late 2023. We're already starting to have to look at how can we prepare for the new grant to take over once the current one has expired. And there's a lot that goes into it. So I thought what I could do is just help you better understand, I guess, the overall kind of process that we have here at EPA. Of course, better understand some of the logistics of the, some of the requirements that we're looking to add or consider in this current grant cycle that's coming up. And then also take a look at the EPA website and consider some other grant opportunities. So let me pull up my screen.
Paula, this is Belinda.
Yes.
I'm getting a couple messages that there's some problems with some static in your audio.
Oh, Should I I'll turn off my video and see if that helps. All right. I unfortunately don't have headphones. This is a new computer. Is that any better?
No.
Yes. Yeah, I was gonna say, I'm still hearing the same.
That's so weird. Hmm. Here, let me mute and then I'll come back on, or I might have to drop out and then jump back on because I just was on a call earlier and I didn't have that problem. Okay. Okay. Is that any better?
Yes.
That is clearer.
Oh, good. Okay.
All right. And now you
All
can,
right.
I'm sure, bring your video back too. Thank you, Paula.
No problem. All right. And if it becomes, yeah, just let me know. I did see a quick chat, but I didn't catch what it said. So just feel free to stop me if I'm not sounding clear. Okay, let me pull up. Let's see. All right, you can't see this yet, can you?
I think we saw your EPA website.
Okay. Share. I pulled up a bunch of video, or I'm sorry, web pages in my, not my Chrome, but maybe I have to pull them over to
We are
that.
seeing the Special Appropriation Act projects on the
Oh,
screen
good.
and the
Okay.
tabs for your other pages.
Okay, perfect. I know I'm used to seeing the red border around my screen if it's showing. So, okay, good. All right. So I wanted to just reacquaint everybody with the EPA grants webpage that all of you should become very familiar with if you want to learn more about EPA grants. And I'm going to kind of fill in here for where I think Nancy had covered some really great info and maybe give a little bit more depth. Just in terms of, especially from the perspective of at the EPA and kind of where we are with how we're building things here on our end and how best to respond to some of the things that we need. So this is a great page that I like to take a look at just to see for myself too. There's really great trainings and webinars because every few years things are updating and changing, and I have to even look and see what has changed that I need to put together on my package material to get it through and approved and get it up on the grants.gov website for you all to apply. So I'm here as well, and this little subscription to the listserv I highly recommend. I have joined this one as well just because it gives you all kinds of information on trainings and changes in management requirements or other just grant information that can come in handy. So definitely look to add yourself to that so you can keep up to date with everything, at least on the EPA side of things when it comes to grants. And we do have a lot of funding. A lot of the work that we're doing here at the agency level is just getting the grant funding from Congress and then sending that on down to the states, who then send that on down to the different projects and programs throughout the state. So, a lot of our funding really does go through grants and specifically to states, but a lot of other types of grants as well. And I'll just quickly go through a few of those since I'm here on that webpage. So if you come to this specific EPA grants programs, you can see the different types of opportunities. This is a lot of the grants for states or tribes. There's fellowships, air grants and funding. I thought I'd click on that one just to check you all are seeing these different pages I'm pulling up, correct? I think, hopefully.
Yes, we are.
Great. Okay. So if you wanted to learn more about what type of air grants and funding, this is a good page that you would come to. You can look at the Inflation Reduction Act appropriations, the bill, the bipartisan infrastructure law, some of the funding that's coming down for that. And that just takes you down to these different areas. The grant funding for emissions from wood heaters. There's a lot of like key information here too that I want to show you all when I'll pull up the RFA, like Nancy mentioned a few times, the request for applications. I'd like to show you all that of what was posted and provided back in 2020, or I guess 2019 when we really put it out, just to kind of walk you through that. But something like this assistance listing number, those are key numbers that kind of talk about the different types of funding or like the different type of grant that it is coming from. So there's like the title of the grant funding for emissions from wood heaters. And then it has the assistance listing number. And for mine, it's 66.610. And that's like specific types of like special programs or opportunities under EPA's Office of the Administrator. But there's tons of these different codes that kind of relate back to what type of appropriation or authorization does the agency have to create the grant funding. So one thing I've learned, I've worked in both contracts and grants, and I would say contracts is in many ways much easier than the grants world because it's not as easy as just saying, hey, we have some money, let's hand out for great projects or programs that are doing great work. It's a lot. I think honestly in the past I get the sense that it used to be much more relaxed, and there was kind of this like free for all with money that maybe wasn't managed as well, and there were some problems, so they really tightened up the whole process. And so just to say that there is a lot of detail that you kind of, once you get the hang of it, it's not so bad, but it is a little overwhelming at first. So I think this is a great opportunity to talk more about just in general EPA grant opportunities. And then of course I have an invested interest to want to encourage you all to consider applying for the upcoming grant opportunity, just to improve and increase competition. And ultimately, the agency is very big on ensuring there's competition in all of our solicitations so that we as the federal purchaser gets the best product or service possible. And that really does happen when we see there's competition, and really trying to ensure that folks are bringing their best foot forward and getting that grant. So anyway, I just wanted to pull this up to kind of help you dig down a little bit as you can peruse other grant opportunities. Talks about the deadline of when you would need to apply by. Many of the grant solicitations have 30 to 60 days to apply. So that's a decent amount of time, but a lot of times they'll even do some sort of forecasting to let the public or grant applicants know about things that are coming down the pike. So this is kind of what I'm doing here. It's like we haven't put out the solicitation, but we're trying to help get people warmed up to the idea that something's coming and that we are looking to get this need fulfilled, because we realize it is a big, heavy lift to put together these applications and proposals, which ultimately turn into your project plan. So it's really important to make sure that that proposal is as close to what you think you can do and how you propose to meet the needs of the request for application, because that ultimately, once it's approved, it turns into your project plan. So I'll go back here. I just wanted to pull up one other, you can see some of the other types of grants, the kind of umbrella types of grants that are available. I know a lot of folks in the SB world also have pollution prevention grants. So that is another really big kind of umbrella category. The P2 program has a lot of good funding. I would say that's a big portion of the program, is to provide some grant funding to support some of the activities that they're trying to encourage throughout the states and tribes. So you can take a look at the different types. You see that there's a 2-year cycle on some of these. The 5-year cycle is the longest that you can have for a grant here at EPA. Let's see what else I wanted to show you all. So I did pull up, so as Nancy mentioned, sam.gov is an important web page that you will need to be registered in. And that's because it's going to be one of the standard requirements to respond to requests for applications. So you want to have that already up and ready to go and feel comfortable that you have, all of that set and done ideally before even the RFA comes out. So you just don't have to worry about it. It's ready. But that's also where you can look at assistance listings. So you can pull up, like I pulled this up based on the same type of assistance listing number that the OSDBU grant is listed, just to get a sense of what other kind of things are out there. So this is one currently, the ECOS Omnibus and Interstate Technology Resource Council cooperative agreements. I don't know a whole lot about this. This is kind of new to me too, but I just think it's interesting to take a look at. This might be something perhaps that you all could be interested in applying for and utilizing kind of the tools that Nancy just gave you in terms of determining if this is a good fit. But just to give you an idea of the types of web pages or resources that you can go to kind of get more clear on what's available. So for instance, I think an interesting thing here is to talk about authorizations. And you might be wondering, what does this mean? Well, every time here in an EPA program office, so for me being an OSDBU, and I want to do a project, I want to put together a grant, I have to show how that grant project somehow connects to the authorizations for us to fund that project. So usually stemming from some sort of statutory or requirement or law. So you have to really make the connection that there are, Congress has directed the federal government to put in place some of these, projects or, restrictions, policies that we need to try to help support through our funding. And then that helps us connect what Congress has allowed, or I guess authorized the federal government to do. And since Congress holds the purse strings, that helps give them the green light to show, okay, we are good to spend money on this. And that's kind of how everything is very connected. We really have to show a lot of that in our grants program. It's much more stringent than, say, in the contracts world. So just to give you a little background on that. I tried to do the same with grants.gov so I could pull up some things for you guys, because that is where the RFA for any federal grant and maybe even some non-federal grants, I believe. I don't know the extent of grants.gov. I just know that all federal grants and certainly all EPA grants will be housed here. And for some reason, I couldn't search. I was trying to pull up just EPA grants, and it had like a weird blank screen. It wasn't letting me pull them up. So there is a couple different ways you can search, but ultimately, this is kind of going to be your hub of where you're going to look to see what type of opportunities, get the basic info about the grant. And what will always happen is you'll see the attachment. Like if we go, maybe we can pull up one. But if we look at the grant opportunity and click on it to kind of open it up, it's going to always have a quick summary of what's available or what the grant project is. And then it's going to, so we'll just pull up one of these. Maybe we can get an EPA one. it's always going to have like a summary, some of the basic info, and then usually here it has like somewhere the attachment of the RFA. But always it will take you to the program office webpage where you can get the full information, and kind of it ties you to where the the like grant is housed in, as far as like who's managing that grant, whether it's in the Department of Energy or EPA. And EPA, the OSDBU office, it's going to take you to my office webpage, and you can get more information about the grant. So before I go through the RFA that we have for the SB program, I thought I'll just pause there and see if there are any questions or concerns with my microphone. Feel free to chime in. And then I was going to talk about the competition process flow just a little bit, so you guys can kind of get a sense of the timing of things. Any questions?
Microphone sounds good, Paula.
Great.
And
Okay, good.
yes, and go forward, make sure we have a time for some questions at the end as well. And I don't see anything new in the chat.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I'm seeing the time, so I'll try to make this quick. Well, this is on the EPA Gov grants website, but it really takes you through the whole process where you can kind of get a sense of why we're starting so early to really get things together. Because on my end, I have to do a lot of approval process through our grants competition advocate until it gets up onto grants.gov. Then I have to leave at least 30 to 60 days for the applications to come in. We have to put together a grant review panel, and often that panel will have at least one person who is not at all involved with the program. They really want at least one person who's kind of like clean slate, works at EPA but doesn't know about the program. And that'll be important to know as you think about how to write up your grant proposal. You have to assume that this person somebody that's scoring your application may know nothing about the SB program, certainly may know nothing about any past performance. And so it's really important to keep that in mind. And that panel will be scoring every application. And that takes kind of a process there to get the panel together, to make a selection, make that selection recommendation to our official. And then we have to let before we award the person or the grantee that was selected, we have to give some time for any of those that were not selected or ineligible, some sort of debriefing process, which can add more time, weeks to even potentially months, depending on how many applications we get before we can make that award. So that adds quite a few months if you combine all of that in. All right. So the last thing I wanted to show, and hopefully, can you all see my RFA document here? It says EPA at the top, and it's a Word
Yes.
document. Okay. So this is essentially the attachment that is put into grants.gov. This is the RFA document itself. From at least this current grant cycle, and what was posted on grants.gov in 2020. As you can see, and this might likely be the same template that we're going to use. I have to still see if there's any changes that need to be made based on any new grants management requirements. But you're always going to see the agency, the title, the action, which is now called an RFA. It used to be RFP, but this is the RFA number that they give us. This is that listing, that number, that solicitation number. I forget what it was called before, but it's also called a CFDA, listing assistance number. And then some of the important dates that at least, we can kind of see when things open, close, when the anticipated award is. This is a 25-page document, but don't let that scare you, because by and large, a lot of this is boilerplate language. I mean, yes, this kind of goes into the summary of the program. Again, more kind of generic information about the total funding of the award. We offer a table of contents, but really the nuts and bolts of this program that you would probably immediately want to go to just to get a sense of like, is this something you could do? What is the like basic parameters of this project? It's going to be where you get this background, and really the scope of work is key language that gives you the real crux of what we're asking for you all to do. And I did put in a couple of notes here, but for this particular grant, we really only had about a page of really specifics about what we're hoping to get from this grant project. It's intentionally left very high level and open because we want to give some parameters of what we're looking for, but the expectation is that the grant applicant is going to use their savviness, their expertise, their understanding of what they already do and why they're capable of doing this, to bring their creativity and how to get to the ultimate goals of collaboration and support of 507 programs, of maintaining and expanding the 507 program website. And then the last one was the 507 annual training conference support and collaboration. Those were the three main areas that we were looking to get a grantee to support this SPEEP grant. And your proposals are all how you can show us how you plan to get there based on your expertise and your familiarity with, collaboration and hosting of events, or your understanding of small business needs and the SBEEP program. All of that is where you can shine and show how you will help us get there. I go through this document a little bit more, and I know we don't have a lot of time, but just to say that a lot of the rest of this RFA document is definitely helpful, but a lot of it is just kind of boilerplate template like requirements. We do curtail it to the needs of this grant, but every RFA is going to have kind of showing the linkage of what this program, how it's linked to the EPA strategic plan. That's really important because it's going to show you how we're allowed to spend the money to fund this grant. Every RFA is going to talk about outputs and outcomes, and we'll give you some examples of how that relates to this specific grant. But again, every RFA is going to have that. Performance measures, same thing. Talking about the statutory authority, same thing. We'll specify for this grant, but every RFA will have that. Talking about funding information, going into more detail than like at the top where we gave you that initial like total dollar amount, but we didn't get into the details. Here's where we get into more of the details. And just really quickly, talking about eligible entities. I know Nancy talked about matching, and some people may not know what that is, but we can maybe talk about that if there's questions. So I was wondering if people really understood what leveraging and matching is. I didn't know what that was until after working on this grant more. I just wanted to quickly show one last thing. So Nancy talked so much about how you really need to like go through the RFA with a fine tooth comb. And one thing I didn't know if it became clear, but this content of application submission, which every RFA will have, is almost like they give you a roadmap of how you put your proposal together. You're really going to have to go step by step, and you might as well just follow exactly the format that the grant RFA gives you, because that's how we're going to kind of line up what did you give us to what we asked, so you can just follow the same process. Easy for everybody. You won't be doxed any points for kind of copying the same format. That actually works best. And just go step by step. That we expect all of these forms. And then we expect the project narrative, really just follow everything here, and meet these different kind of criteria, because we will be scoring you based on how you meet these specific criteria, talking about the program capability and past performance, then go into your voluntary cost and share match. If you have any, it's not required or not always required. And the budget, that's a big one. And that one's really tough. I do not envy anyone that has to work on those, because it's really hard to think through how you're going to spend money for 5 years. And there's a lot of detail that's expected sometimes. But we go into how to do that, and we'll also reference to like some materials on getting better understanding how to put together a budget. There's a lot of good stuff here, and going through it thoroughly is important. This is the whole kind of scoring sheet that we use. So like Nancy said, really do the heavy hitting, most points. That's your smartest bet to stick with those that really carry the most weight. Make sure you don't miss those, because if you forget and you lose 20 points, oof, that's really tough to recover from. So I think that's giving you a very broad understanding of like looking at an RFA and trying to not be too intimidated by it, because the real crux of what we're asking is really only like 1 page. And then the rest is just to try to help guide you in responding to the RFA and how to put your application together, understanding how we're going to score you, all that good stuff. So it's almost like it's there to just try to help and give you as much guidance as possible, rather than assuming this 25-page document is all like outlining our requirements. So I hope that makes sense. And I think that was all I'll share for now, but I'm happy to answer any questions and, open it up for discussion.
Thank you very much, Paula. Does anyone have any questions? We have a comment in the chat from Nancy that this new opportunity actually allows for pollution reduction equipment. And while we are waiting to see if there are any questions, I think that it's really important getting to see this perspective that Nancy gave us of someone who's preparing the application, and then from Paula, who has prepared and put out that RFA and then is going to be having the team scoring it. So you're getting to see that from both sides. And while we are waiting to see if there are any questions, can I ask Abby, would you launch that closing poll for us before? Thank you. All right, so you can either raise your hand, put a question in the chat, or just chime in if you have something. It is a lot of information, and so realize it might take you a while to process and come up with some of the questions as well. And I think because of that, we're going to, as the Education Subcommittee, have some additional grant information, and then also have some grant workshop as part of the annual training this year, so that we can help see. Oh, let's see, it says one new message. Okay, and then it told me there was a new message, but then it won't let me see it. So
I put my hand up, Belinda, sorry, and I've got the sun coming in my window. I love it. Paula's got sun behind her too. I saw it was 49 in DC, so that's good. That was nice, but the sun is good because we had 8 inches of snow on Saturday. Gosh, but I just wanted to start a little dialogue in the last couple minutes. can somebody throw out to us, what are the barriers that you see in preventing you from going for some grant proposals? We are in such a unique time in history, you guys, under the Biden administration, and with the BIL money and all of the climate change. Your programs make a difference. They help people not just get in compliance, but every day when you are out there in the field and you're talking to clients, also how they could take voluntary steps to reduce emissions. Those are the kinds of things that these grants are going for, is to help you hire another person where you can target maybe industry sectors, or you can target environmental justice areas, industry sectors in those environmental justice areas with these pollution reduction, pollution prevention types of techniques. And so I would like to know from people, what's keeping you from doing this, from applying?
Well, maybe, Nancy, as we send out a follow-up email to all of our participants, we ask that question again. Maybe people aren't comfortable saying in front of everyone, but ask that, and I will compile the answers and make them anonymous. But that also helps in seeing if there's anything that that we can do to overcome those hurdles.
Yeah, I just want to encourage you, because like this, the one I just sent out, and I will send it out by email when my Outlook starts working again. But it is a great opportunity to partner with your state, to partner with some other only state entities are eligible. So that means, state universities, accredited universities, as well as obviously all the DEQs and things are eligible. And most of your states applied for and probably got the planning grant. And now they are seeking partners for implementation. And so that's what our team met on yesterday. KDHE, our regulatory agency, hosted meetings around the state saying, hey, we're looking for people to apply for these. And so there's specific things for specific states, but you all are eligible either to be for you to be a partner on someone else's proposal. So they maybe do the heavy lifting and you are the sub-awardee on that. But again, I just want to encourage you. I know a lot of your programs are small, 1, 2, 3 people. And so this is an opportunity for 5 years to get some funding to possibly have another specialist in your office. So.
Thank you, Nancy. And do we have the results of our final poll?
Yep, I will share those.
Thank you. Okay, well, Nancy, Paula, success. Everybody learned something new that they didn't. And 88% are more likely to consider looking into a grant application, and more interest in the National SBEEP website grant as well. Fantastic. Well, thank you everyone for attending. It is now the top of the hour. Really appreciate you coming, and Education Subcommittee will be continuing to bring you information on grants, and I'll be sending out that question in the follow-up. Thank you very much.